So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about concerns around the fact that the UK will not be ready for import checks, despite taking another year to implement them. Which is this is great stuff, proper funny stuff, and you know, the EU said, look, we'll give you another year if you need it to sort out all your import stuff, and we were like, no, we don't need it. Shut up, go away. And the EU were like, all right, cool, bro, good luck. And then the UK were like, do you know what, unilaterally, we're not going to do any import checks on goods coming in from the EU. And the EU were like, and the UK were like, can you reciprocate that and not do any export checks on goods coming out of the UK? The EU said no. They offered us that, and then we said no. And then we went back and asked, yo, can we still have that? And then the EU said no. And then we just looked stupid. We looked so stupid. Anyways, concerns have been raised that several border control posts in the United Kingdom may not be ready in January, when the checks on some imports from Europe are scheduled to come into force. So the question is that, will the UK further delay checks being done and then risk being sued by WTO members, not do the checks, and risk being, do the checks and cause food shortages, B, pretend to do the checks and just wave things through? Option C, that's option C. Are we going to just let stuff through? You'd be like, yeah, what's this? It's like, it's lamb, it's actually beef. It's like, all right, cool, yeah, go through. So many questions, so little time. There's only going to be one or two outcomes, and I can't wait to see it, because this is great stuff here. Proper comedy. Physical checks on products on animal origins will begin in January 2022. Import declarations start in October this year, and HMRC and the other departments are already struggling with declarations and claiming money from people and stuff like that. And businesses, they're massively overwhelmed. They're not ready. They don't know what they're doing, and they never will. At this rate, the EU have been preparing for this since 2016. The UK have never bothered preparing for this, and that's the difference between the two. So these dates have already been pushed back by the UK government. Exports to the EU from Britain have been subject to control since January 2021, and they've had no issues doing it, ironically. Gary Gould, chair of the Association of Port Health Authorities, said several border control posts have indicated they won't be ready by the 1st of January, so that's not going to happen. What is the plan should everything go pear-shaped and not be ready by January 1st when controls are supposed to be introduced? Our view is that all border control posts should be operational at the same time, so if one is not ready, all are not ready. Otherwise, there would be an impact on trade flows and various other problems as well. And the other issue we'd have, if there is a port that's ready and one that is not ready, everyone's going to flood into the port that is ready, and you're going to bottleneck it, and it's going to cause you massive problems, and it will not be ready for that. So a lot is still unclear. Port health authorities operate on a cost recovery basis, as they charge for the checks undertaken, which then fund their operation. So they have to they charge companies to do the checks, basically, and that's how they make money. And that's a massive problem, considering that you have to train staff. This is mentioned in the article, so we'll go from there. Unfortunately, if you introduce controls at some point, you need to recruit staff before they need to be trained, so you need some funding to pay for them whilst they're going through that process and before the controls start. So basically, it's upfront cost. You have to train staff, you have to get facilities in place, and then you claim that money back once you start doing checks. The problem is these companies, these ports, don't have the money to start training staff and putting the infrastructure in place, and they're asking the government to help them out, but the government are like, nah bro, you do your own thing. For example, whether to charge from October for documentary screening, or will it wait until January when full controls are applied? Said Gould, that's another interesting point. When do the checks start taking place? When are you going to start charging people? And then those checks obviously add costs to the products being imported by the UK, which then is going to be passed on to the consumer. He said port authorities do not record what the volume of trade is, but they need to know how much high-risk food is coming through so they can staff border controls appropriately. Obviously, you need things like vets in order to check those. So that's another problem, comes with another cost. There is a requirement for veterinary oversight on products of animal origin, but does not mean they are present all the time, at all times in the border control posts when it is operational. Should they supervise the checking of documents, or will there be more flexibility? These decisions are still waited for. Are there enough environmental health practitioners or vets to go around all the ports' health authorities? It is well known there is a shortage of EHPs, and the question is, what hours are they going to do? Are they going to do a standard 9 to 5? Are they going to be there on call? How is this going to work? How much are you going to pay these vets to work in these ports instead of at veterinaries, where they can look after nice animals like cats, dogs, hamsters and stuff like that, where they can make easy money doing that? How much are you going to pay for vets and EHPs? to do this job at ports, which ultimately is going to be more difficult. Who knows, Chief? Imports of high-risk food need to be pre-notified, but the minimum timing is another issue, because you need to have your vets ready, your EHPs ready. There needs to be sufficient time for document checks to be undertaken and selection of any goods requiring physical checks. Documentary screening is supposed to come in from October 1st, so I assume that answers Mr. Gould's question from earlier about when do checks when should checks take place. It's going to be from October. Port Health Authority still don't know how that system is going to work, which is great stuff. This point here in pink is phenomenal because it shows you that the UK will definitely not be ready. We won't be ready for the checks. So at one point they were talking about using a central hub system. Then they moved it to the ports. Moved it to the import of products, animal food and feed system, IPAFs. And now they're going to be going back to considering a central hub again. Time is short and these things need to be sorted out. They don't know what system they're going to use, whether they're going to use a centralized system or a decentralized system by the looks of things. And that's going to add a further time crunch because these ports are going to have to learn how to use these software. If they don't, then you're going to have massive delays at ports and you're going to have food shortages and other shortages within the country. So once again, the UK doing a phenomenal job of messing this whole thing up. Remote documentary checks are being undertaken because COVID-19 restrictions, so that's another problem. There needs to be a legislative change to allow this to continue after restrictions have been lifted. This issue is critical to ports such as border control post at Sevington, where there isn't the facility to do the documentary checks within the border control post. It would have to be done remotely. So what you're seeing is that they can do these checks remotely, in part due to COVID, but because they don't have the infrastructure in place to do the checks, the documentary checks at the port, that's another problem. Because that, doing it remotely does slow down the process because it means things have to be scanned in and sent off. But the thing is, they can't do the documentary checks on site because the infrastructure is not there, and the infrastructure definitely won't be there by early next year when these checks are set to happen, if that makes sense. So this is another really good point here made by the gang, made by Mr. Gould, I think it is. Another phenomenal point that the UK hasn't set in place. Are these checks going to be done remotely, the documentary ones, and what kind of internet, what kind of system is going to be used to log everything that comes into the country? Because you're going to have to do so for tax reasons as well. Like a puzzle with missing pieces, one of the most frustrating kinds of puzzles. Lawrence Detnan, Chief Port Health Inspector at Hull and Gulport Health Authority, said it has vast volumes of diverse range of EU foodstuffs coming in which are currently unchecked because we're not doing checks. A lot of this comes in on the just-in-time philosophy for deliveries where stocks are generally not held. Warehousing is very expensive, so a lot arrives in the port this morning and is delivered to distribution centres, not warehouses, and factories by lunchtime or this afternoon. So say you're importing something like feta for pasta dishes that are ready meals and whatever, that might come in just in time. It would go straight to distribution centres and the factories to be put onto pasta ready meals and then passed off. The thing is, because of all the checks and all the delays, certain things may have to be stored due to shortages, and that comes with a cost. It says we are looking at possible 24/7 shift working to enable checks to be completed. Obviously that's going to be very expensive to do that. Hopefully before arrival of the ferries in the morning, if we don't complete the documentary checks before arrival, there will be immediate backlogs. That's straight off the jump. You're talking probably about 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. at that point. If they don't do all the documentary checks, or if the documentary checks aren't sent in before the goods arrive, backlog, and that's going to be hard to clear right from the jump. They go on to say it's like attempting a massive jigsaw where you have four corners and large parts of the centre missing. Although there are more pieces being given to us now, the question is, are you going to know how to use them when the time comes, given that October is not very far away? Detman said it was more important to remember port health authorities are part of cash-strapped local authorities, councils that have had massive budget cuts thanks to the government. These charges we make on importers will have to be balanced and fair, and trying to set a charging regime is never going to be popular with traders. Also, the fact that certain traders may avoid the UK due to the fact that they're going to start being charged. We've already seen certain EU companies refuse to export to the UK because they need an account with HMRC. And they don't like that, and therefore they've stopped exporting to us because they're going to have to log their tax accounts with HMRC, and it's an added cost for them, and they think, well, that's not worth it, I'm not going to bother exporting to your country. Government have made resources available for port health authorities for border readiness, but that has to be sustainable. We can't do it off a one-off grant or a 2-year funding package. We've more than doubled our workforce already this year. That's a lot of people they've added. In preparation, we will triple it by October. Again, more staff, more costs. The new high volume of checks from none to thousands we have to do, and we will place great reliance on new IT systems that haven't actually been created yet. And the problem here is you're going to have to teach, all of these new staff how to do checks that they've never had to do before. That's new and existing staff that they may never have had to do these checks before. That's going to be difficult, especially on a system that doesn't yet exist. Bear with me a moment. From the 1st of October, new documentary checks come in, and January 1st is the date for the start of the full checks regime. That's documentary with ID and physical checks at the new border control posts, which haven't opened yet. They are not fully built yet. So you're relying on the government and these industries to build the ports and the infrastructure that haven't been built yet. There's still a lot to do. The 6-month delay have given us an opportunity to have a little more time to prepare, but 6 months passes very quickly. So you've got to imagine that they've got to get these buildings built. They've got to put all the computers in place. Then they have to teach people, this new trebled workforce, how to use these new IT systems that don't exist. We've got no chance of having this thing online by the 1st of January. Absolutely no chance. So the question is, and I'm going to pose this to you guys again right now, does the UK not do the checks, delay it further, do the checks but not do the checks properly, just start waving things through and risking the wrath of the WTO on the first two? Or do the UK do the checks properly and create a massive food shortage within the country, because we're massively reliant on exports of food from the EU, especially now because farmers in this country can't do their jobs because of a lack of staff, be it in agriculture or meats, meat, cows, all that stuff, and also in meat processing as well. So is the UK not going to do the checks, further delay it, do the checks but not do the checks properly, or do the checks properly and risk a food shortage? Which one is it, A, B or C? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.